South African companies could soon have some respite as the Department of Home Affairs is taking new steps to make hiring foreigners easier. The department has offered something of a glimmer of hope with it inviting corporate employers to submit an expression of interest in something called the Trusted Employer Scheme pilot. With me now is Marisa Jacobs from the company Xpatweb. It's a work permit and immigration provider here in South Africa. And firstly, can you provide me with some insight into the main reasons for the current delay in the visa application system?
So the backlog at the moment is getting increasingly worse, unfortunately. We had a breakfast update with the Department of Home Affairs presenting where we got the sobering news that the backlog has increased from the 60,000 that was announced earlier in the year up to an amount of 74,000 at the moment. So definitely getting worse and worse. And it stems from a failed centralized adjudication system that got implemented in 2022 where all applications submitted at foreign embassies got rerouted to head office in South Africa, which has resulted in this massive backlog on applications that is just getting worse and worse by the day, and the department doesn't seem to be able to catch up with the backlog. And even new submissions coming in, there isn't capacity within the department to deal with the volume of applications that they're receiving on a day-to-day basis.
And what type of skills are we talking about, and how critical are those skills to the South African economy?
The backlog at embassy level has been across work visa categories. So you're looking at critical skills and intra-company specifically. So intra-company transfer visas is usually for large multinationals who are looking to send their senior talent through to South Africa to upskill South Africans. And that is across many industries and different occupations. And then, of course, critical skills, which we've got a shortage of in South Africa, and companies looking to recruit critically skilled occupations from abroad, bringing them in. And that again is across, we see engineering at the top of that list, but then of course your C-suite executive level, ICT type of positions, so really a large spectrum of roles.
And the upshot, if this continues, of course, is that these multinationals will simply look elsewhere or even consider relocation.
Unfortunately, South Africa is not the only country looking for skilled and talented individuals. So where it becomes too difficult to get into South Africa, they most certainly look at other options and being very skilled talent, can easily get into somewhere else. So it's important for us to remain competitive as a country to be able to attract those skills.
Now we have a situation where a pilot is being introduced for the Trusted Employer Scheme. Do you think this is a step in the right direction to address the skills vacuum that you've already outlined for me?
Absolutely. I think any initiatives that aims to relieve pressure and implement a more predictable system to bring talent into the country for corporates should be encouraged and applauded.
So what would a predictable system, in your opinion, construe?
So at the moment, if we look at any company applying for a work visa, there is no certainty around what documentation you're going to be asked. So there's obviously the Immigration Act and the regulation that outlines those documentation. But depending on which embassy you're submitting your application, you get asked for a myriad of different documents and additional documents. The normal list, for example, is roughly about 20 documents for a work visa. If you submit in India, you get asked for deep into the cities documents. So just additional items that get asked that makes it extremely difficult to put together an application in a predictable way. So that's the one thing, is solidifying the document list and making sure that regardless of where your submission is in, you know what you're going to have to put together and what to submit. And then secondly, and probably more important, is how long it's going to take for your visa application to be processed so that business can plan around when they will be able to get a resource into the country. So South Africa is not the only country that takes very long to process a visa application. We see that with other countries as well, but they have a more predictable timeline. If they say 10 weeks, it is 10 weeks. Where in South Africa, it's a guessing game how long it's going to take to get your visa issued.
Marisa, we've also got the concept of the 100-point system for processing applications under the scheme. Do you think the factors and their respective point allocations are balanced and effective?
I think the concern around, I think the qualifying criteria it's quite strict. If we look at the feedback that has come through from business, it is that those criteria are very restrictive, and it would mean that there's a very small number of businesses that would in fact qualify for the trusted employer scheme. I think that is probably intentional so by the Department of Home Affairs in order to keep the number of companies that participate as low as possible in this pilot phase at least, so that they can test it out, see what works well. And then I do believe that once the pilot phase is rolled out and they have sorted out the niggles and it's a smooth running process, that qualifying criteria will probably be relaxed slightly, so we'll be able to see more companies participate. And then I think the item that's probably of most concern is the heavy weighting around investment. So you need to get 80 points in order to qualify, and 30 points is allocated to those who have pledged an investment at the President Cyril Ramaphosa's investment conference or can prove previous investment. So it makes that criteria very small, because if you cannot meet that one item, you obviously cannot meet the 80-point requirement. And that is a big challenge that's going to narrow that list of eligible companies right down to a very small number.
Marisa Jacobs is from the company Xpatweb. Thank you very much for joining me on Moneyweb at Midday.